Okay, hi everyone. This is ACAB True Crime, and I decided today that it might be a good idea for me to try to do a review of some of the testimony in the Delphi case, specifically stuff that has to do with like the psych department in the prison. And I actually used to be a prison psychologist, but I actually am no longer doing that. So I think I have kind of like a unique position or like a beneficial position, especially for like a platform like, YouTube, or just for speaking out in general, to feel more free about speaking out specifically stuff that's going on, like kind of behind doors, and maybe help explain a little bit of the differences between like prison psychology and community psychology. And I think a lot of times, like, there's actually not very many prison psychologists out there. And um, I don't know. I don't really know why that is, but it's definitely a bad idea. Like there should definitely be more, but yeah, I think there's like, a lot of forensic psychologists, which I've also done, but that's usually done before you get to prison or like the correctional facility. And then once you actually are in the correctional facility, like things kind of change a little bit in terms of just what the standards and um, like considerations in terms of ethical things and like what's legally required and all of that. And it just gets like a little bit like more messy, I guess, like in the prison world. So I think when I was reviewing, so I've definitely been following the Delphi case for a while, and I just like, I guess I should put it out there just in case anyone is watching this that doesn't know what the Delphi case is, but it was a like M word of two girls, teenage girls from the like 2017, and they're from Delphi, Indiana, and they were found word like at the bottom of like a creek, and they didn't have any suspects that they arrested for a really long time. And then like 5 years later, like in 2022, Richard Allen was arrested, and he is the person who is currently on trial right now. And like currently as we speak, the trial is going or is like on deliberations, and they're trying to decide what might happen. I personally think that it's going to be a hung jury, but anyways, I just figured like while we wait for the testimony to come back, and so like another really stupid thing about this trial is like the judge really sucks in it, and she's made like a ton of bad calls, and one of them is about not allowing cameras in to the trial. So the information that everyone in the world, besides the people that are actually like in court and watching the proceedings um, in the courtroom, like don't know exactly what is like happening, I guess. So it's just a bad call and sucks. But there are like a lot of reporters that are there, and they are so yeah, I've watched different like podcasts. So it's been like almost 3 weeks that the trial's been going on, I think. And it has, yeah, almost every night, and I guess not every night, but whatever, it doesn't matter. I've been following pretty closely with the proceedings, and the days that definitely started sparking my interest were obviously the days where they were interviewing the correctional staff and also like the psychology staff, like the prison psych department and all of those behavioral health things. So and I felt like, I was listening to a lot of reactions just across the board from like different podcasts and like YouTube channels, and like even different reportings from news stations. And I just felt like a lot of people weren't necessarily like completely understanding the like what would you call it, like idiosyncrasies like behind this special area. So I figured it like would be worth just putting my insight out there. And I think the best way to just do that is I like before reviewed a couple of like actual written reports that were published, like written articles. And so I'm going to share the article that I already went over, except it kind of sucks because for some reason my computer is like, oh yeah. Also, I'm going to eventually go back and check what people are saying. But yeah, so but yeah, I'm just gonna try to get this out now, and then maybe I'll like take a break like every like 20 minutes or something, and then like check back up on questions, because I feel like I'm gonna get distracted. But hello everyone, thank you so much for being here. And it's 3:33, so that's cool. So I will share that like starting from day 10, I think, is when the testimony starts getting like interesting enough to like have it be worthwhile for me to comment on. So I will share my screen real quick. Okay. Oh yeah, and what I was going to say is I was doing the highlighting on my iPad, but like it's a different color, so it's really shitty like coloring. And I apologize for that, but whatever. So I was thinking I could just not share it, but just kind of like try to keep up with both screens. So okay, so on the 10th day, they heard like, oh yeah, there was like the testimony, which I was also thinking I'm going to make a separate channel like video about like my thoughts about this case in general, but like I wanted to just do a psych specific video, so that's what this one is. So I think I will, depending on what's going on with the case and like if there's time and other cases that might be going on, but maybe go back and do like an overview of some of my thoughts about just stuff that doesn't have to do with specifically the psych stuff. But I just think that the most pertinent stuff to share right now is kind of my insight into the psych prison world. So yeah, so the first half of the day 10 is like where he's being investigated or interrogated. Like Richard Allen is being interrogated by the two detectives in that, and they're like pretty big jerks, and like usually like the police officers can always lie, and it's just, and actually like Richard Allen did like a decent job, like being like, screw you guys, like I'm not gonna admit to something I didn't do. So and then they arrested him. So, and then it goes down into the second part of the day. Yeah, here we go. I'm sorry, it's kind of like crazy with some of the notes that I took, but it is talking about a lot of the testimony that was focused on the confessions that Allen allegedly made to prison guards who were stationed outside his cell while he was on suicide watch. And then it says that the former Westville Correctional Facility warden testified Allen sent a request asking to speak to him. And then it says like the jury also heard from 8 prison guards who interacted with Allen and who wrote down his statements and behavior. So like I from my experience in like working in the prisons, and again, like this is like the Department of Corrections for Indiana, and I worked for the Department of Corrections in Minnesota, and like from everything that I can read and stuff, like they're very similar. So and this sounds like what they do is like depending on, so if anyone goes on suicide watch, it's like they put them in this like Velcro suit, and sometimes they're like different colors. So like they'll call it like the banana suit because there's one that's like bright yellow, and honestly it's like seems a little bit like, I always thought that when they put it on, and like even the way that the guards talked about it, and even like the other psychologists and like mental health department people, like it was just like a little like degrading. So it was like didn't really seem necessary. Like I understand that you don't want him to be like around anything, but like I don't know, like I just feel like there's like a better way to go about that. But yeah, and then they also will have to do rounds. So sometimes depending on like, I think in Minnesota, it was like the guards would do like every 15 minutes, they would have to walk by the room. And like they talked about in the trial, and they'll get into later on in here, it's like the conditions are just horrible in some of these cells. And like, I mean, what's crazy about this case is like Richard Allen, like he was never even charged. Like they took him to like the prison and put him there and said it was like because it was for his safety, but it's like no one even showed that he was like in danger. And that's just like unheard of. And like the way like that the restrictions are and the way that things go between prison versus jail is totally different. So like there's different rights for like medications and like how you can continue be getting like medicated. Like a lot of times when you're in jail, you continue seeing like your practitioner like outside of jail, like in the community, but then once you go to prison, it gets switched to like being the prison psychologist. And which like really messed up in my opinion is like it almost seems like, and this is what I really thought too, and I'll get more into it like as we get into like Dr. Wallace's testimony. But I always thought, and like this is why I don't work there anymore, is because I just did not see eye to eye at all with these people. like the psychology department or like the correctional officers. And a lot of times I thought it was just like, I mean, they were actually practicing like unethically. So, but yeah, and then okay, yeah. So it sounds like right here they were doing um different like suicide watches. So every 15 minutes they have to go by the door and make sure that he is still alive, and then they keep the lights on, or maybe they turn them off for 10 minutes, but that's like, 24/7 happening every 15 minutes. Like, I just don't see why that's necessary, especially if you have a camera too. And like I've been, and like, so then if someone is on suicide watch, like you like automatically with like the procedures of the prison have to have someone from like the behavioral health department checking in on one of those like offenders, like on all of the offenders on suicide watch. And so then that person usually goes around, checks in with everyone, and then logs it. And then there's like multiple different types of like reporting logs that go on in prison too. And I'll get into those like a little bit more. But like these logs right here is probably just a log where, well, okay, so like I'm not positive, but this is like what I'm pretty sure that it is like in Indiana, but this is what it was like at the prisons in Minnesota. Is that like, there's 3 shifts that work at the prison for like the correctional officers. And then there's different units that they all watch after. And then, so there's prison or like offender or not correctional officers that are like assigned to just like the behavioral health unit, let's say. And that same person, correctional officer, works there and gets to know everyone there, like all the staff that's maybe there, like other staff that's working there, like social workers, or if it's actually like, in a treatment part of the facility, like we actually had specific treatment, like correctional officers that like knew kind of about the different like special like days that they would do, or like their schedules versus like regular like in the gen pop versus like in a treatment unit. And like that depends on like where you're getting your treatment, also depends on the level of like security for prisons. So there's jail, which is just in its own like thing. And then but it also has like all different types of levels of offenders, because it's not like no one's been actually charged yet. And then there's like minimum security, and then there's medium security, and then there's maximum, and then there's super max. And I know for sure like in Minnesota, the super max, we have one, and that is like where our like extremely like behavioral people go. So people that are just like out of control and like need to be like watched so they're not like hurting themselves or others. And it's a very similar thing to the well, it kind of depends, but yeah, sometimes it's almost like you're hospitalized. And at least in Minnesota, the Supermax prison is also where the hospital is too for the prison. So it's just different levels of care. And like with the Supermax and with the Max, you just have a lot more officers that are around. Like it's a much more controlled movement. And there's just way more correctional officers per the like people, like the offenders. So and it's interesting too, because in this, it seems like in at least in Minnesota, in the super max and the max and the medium, like there's not a lot of psychologists. Like most of the psychologists work in like the low level, like level security prisons, because they are or wait, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, because they're actually like doing treatment with them, and like running groups, and that's like a whole other separate thing. So okay, so what this sounds like is that at the end of every shift, like in every little unit, people like have reports that they share with like the next oncoming staff. So like correctional officers that work during the day would like have been writing throughout the day like different incidents that were happening. And then if it was like an incident that involved, something kind of like that wasn't, I mean, even if it's arguing, like if 2 offenders get into it, like that's an incident report, and then you write it. Or like, it's just anything that's worth noting. And then at the end of that shift, like the like head of the shift for the whole facility at that time puts together kind of like a I don't know, like a bulletin basically that goes out to everyone, and like everyone in the system can open up like each shift's little incident report log. But that would be just specifically if offenders are fighting with one another, or if something happened, like, this offender found out that his like mom died, like let's make sure that we keep an extra eye on him tonight, or whatever. But like then there's also like logs on the like suicide watch. So then that's just a log where you're like initialing. If you have to check every 15 minutes, you walk by, you initial it. So it's not necessarily like, but they're probably telling them like, hey, each time that you're walking by, like try to listen to see if you can hear anything that's going on in there. And then if you can, like try to document that so we can say, like, this is what's going on with him, or like have people have more insight into like kind of what his like behavioral health is and just physical health, whatever. So I think that that's pretty much what they're getting these reports. Like, so there's like the rest of the day, there's like, I think 7 or 8 correctional officers. One of them's the warden, and like 7 of them are like different just correctional officers from like within this facility. And they probably, I don't know how many different people saw him, but either way, like, it sounds like he was just in that one cell pretty much the entire time, which is crazy. Like, and it's definitely not a good place. And as they talk about in the trial, it's like, not recommended for anyone to be in solitary confinement for like longer than 30 days. And like, you shouldn't even do it at all if someone like, or maybe not more than like 3 days or something, if someone has like considered to have like mental health issues. And that's like another thing that I'll get into too, when they start talking about like these different classifications about like serious mental illness and all that different stuff. Like, that depends on what the offenders are released into the community with, and the way that they treat it like in prison is not like the way that it would be treated in the community. Like, people are much more like, just what's the word, like, they don't believe them, like skeptical. And it's almost like you just go into any type of psych eval, like assuming that they're going to try to like manipulate you, which I just think is like not like the best way to address like mental health, like especially in the prisons, if we're trying to help it. Like, I just feel like, and that's what the way how we're trained as psychologists is to like provide, like empathetic care. But so it's just kind of crazy because there's like a lot of situations in like prison psych departments that you're like basically forced to like practice outside of the like ethical and like whatever standards like for the APA in general. And it's like they don't really talk about that like in the APA. Like, I feel like that was definitely not like addressed as much, so as it should have been. But yeah, so, and let's see, I'll look back and see if anyone has questions right now, because it's been like 15 minutes, and then I'll go into what they reported on here. Okay. I'll have heard nothing but crazy stuff called Dr. Wong. Yeah, I agree with the last, or like with line 2. Torture, shocking, dragging alone. Yeah, totally. Yeah, mice infested stuff. It is disgusting. And like the way that they treat people in prisons is like, dude, it's really fucked up. Let's see. The whole thing is big fat demon filled live. Yeah, definitely. But I feel like if he was on meds, he definitely should have been giving meds. Like, if you go into a jail and you're prescribed medication, like, you should automatically just be continued to be like on that medication. And like most of the time when you enter into prison with meds, like they automatically just kind of start you off at like nothing. And you almost like have to show that, like, I don't know, it's like almost like a reboot to be like, okay, we're gonna like and like assess you now in prison, and we're going to take a look at it from the psych evaluation in prison, which like, and that's the thing that's like bullshit about like psychology, and that I majorly had issues with, is it's just so subjective, and it's like, I do think that there's like a lot of really helpful things about the study of psychology and all of that type of stuff, but it's just like the way that, like, the weight that it's given in some of these cases, like, considering whether or not someone is like developmentally disabled enough to not be put to death, like on death row, like that's a pretty big call based on someone kind of deciding whether or not they think that they like fit the criteria of like some, and like, it's like people are like, oh, it's like based off of IQ, but an IQ test is the same shit. Like, it's like all of it is basically just like what a bunch of like old white men made up like a while ago, and obviously they're like not great at taking into consideration like what the rest of the world like, you know, cares about or is good at, or if like those skills are like represent actually like what helps you in this world, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like the skills that they're put out there for the IQ is what they all decided would help you be successful like as a white male like in society like 50 years ago. But like that doesn't mean that it's like, you know, has the same skills are beneficial to like, you know, an Asian like mother and in America like current day or something. So it's just weird. Like I have a lot of opinions about some of the psych testing, but I definitely have like a lot of experience with that. And yeah, so and a little bit down. So I will get back into this. So I think I don't know, like I'm trying to be more frequent about going live, and I do think that there's like a lot to say, and I've taken like a lot of notes. I like basically have, you know, testimony that I want to review from like day 10 to day 14. So I think today maybe I'll just do this for like, you know, an hour. I started at 3:30, so I'll end at 4:30, and then I think I'll plan on signing back on tomorrow, like around the same time, and like continuing to do that. And I'll see what, you know, how the feedback is. And if you are watching this, thank you so much for being here. And if you could subscribe, that would be awesome. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers by the end of the year, which is like I'm not far off at all. So that would be great if you could. And okay, so says, oh, the shift log, kind of like I already said that. Oops, wait. And let's see, describe different. Okay, I did that. And how a controlled environment is. Okay, I talked about that. This is the worst of the worst in Indiana DOC. Sounds extra shitty. I agree. Yeah. So that's what I said. I don't know if you can read it there, but I said, I kind of explained the different security levels and like how controlled the different environments are. And like, this is the worst of the worst in terms of like being on suicide watch. Like, it's not even in like being in the hole, which is like segregation. It's like suicide watch, so it's even worse. So, and then also the Indiana DOC sounds gross. Like, I mean, in Minnesota, like, well, actually, like the prison that I worked at, and it was like Stillwater, and in Minnesota, and it's like it's actually on like list of historical buildings in like the United States or something, and it's so old and they don't have air conditioning, and it smells so bad in there in the summer, and it's just gross. It's like shitty that they even, and like they all work, like they go to separate jobs, and I don't know, it's just I don't know. It's like one of the really old school ones that has like the 3 tiers, which they don't even really allow anymore because it's like dangerous because it's like too high up for the guards to be able to see like what's going on. But I think because it's so overcrowded now, like they kind of do have some of the third tiers open possibly. So the whole like prison thing is just gross. But okay, so moving on. It says okay. Officer John Miller testified Allen told him, I got what I deserved for what I did, and I hope I burn in hell for what I did. And then Officer Raymond Smith said Allen was talking to himself in the middle of the night, saying one time, Kathy, I did it. I'm guilty. Run, Kathy, run. I did it. The defense pushed back on the testimony, asking the warden and guards about Allen's mental state at the time of the confessions, painting a picture for the jury of conditions inside the maximum security prison that drove Richard Allen to serious mental health problems, including behaviors like drinking out of the toilet in his cell and eating his own feces. So, like, that actually like does happen quite a bit, like for people in jail. Like, um, I don't know necessarily why, but like I just feel like because they probably just have like nothing else to work with. Like if you're on like suicide watch and like you literally all you have is like this like Velcro outfit, like you can't have anything in there. Like what else do you have to work with except like your feces, you know? And like spit, like a lot of times like offenders like in order to kind of like I don't know, fight back, I guess, but not necessarily fight, but like a lot of times they'll like spit on people and like the COs when they walk by when they're doing their rounds, or sometimes they'll like literally like, you know, defecate into like a bag and then like when the CO is walking by, they'll like stomp on it and it like blows up all over them. Like it's super fucking gross. But like also when mentally ill people have issues like that too and are like really stressed and just like not taking care of themselves, like they can kind of revert to some behavior like that sometimes. I mean, everyone's different, but it definitely does happen a lot more in prison than it does like in the community, because I've worked both in prison psychology and then also like in community, like mental health and serious and persistent mental illness, which is the same thing that they talk about for SMI. But okay, so I guess like what I would say about this part of it, about, you know, painting the picture for the conditions to be so bad that he was like really bad mentally, I would say that that is true. So let's see. It was a long day for the jury. Testimony didn't wrap up until 6:30. That's the longest day we've seen in court proceedings, whatever. Okay. But then it says, okay, I'm going to skip this stuff because this isn't, I'll like comment on this on my other video if I make just like a general video. Wait. Oh yeah, okay. Also, just one thing I'm going to mention, that this is just like neither here nor there, but it's so weird to me, like all of these different cities, like their names, like Delphi, Peru. I think there was like a Mexico. Like to me, that's weird. Like, I don't know, but okay. Yeah, so we'll just skip ahead all this stuff. Oh, see, this is the part that I thought was really messed up too, is like when they were interrogating him, they were being so rude. Like this was on like in October of 2022. It was like right before they arrested him. But they knew that he had mental health issues and like they used it against him. Like they were like in this part, they were like, he tells Alan they knew he talked about wanting to hurt himself with his like pew pew. Which I'm like, dude, like it's just I don't know, it just does not feel like the best way to like get someone to admit to what they did anyways. And also like, why are we gonna try to like super traumatized people that like didn't do this? Like, why are you like, we don't want people to have like nervous breakdowns, you know what I mean? Like if he actually did do this and he's like, you know, that's his history, like don't try to like set him off so then he goes off and like tries to do it again or what, and send him home to his wife if you don't have enough information to arrest him or something. It just seems weird. And then they can lie and yeah, all that stuff is weird. But so then yeah, okay, yeah, and he like sounded like more feisty. So then okay, then no, so sorry, I'm gonna admit to something I didn't do, bloody blah. Oh yeah, we know you have anger issues and depression. Oh, Alan goes, I believe in science. That bullet did not come from my gun if it was found at the murder scene or on the bridge. I believe in science, but not like, that's funny that he said that because like they try to present ballistics as a science, but I'm not lying to you. Oh yeah, and here he goes, like one of them. Anyways, I'm not gonna go on with this, but one of them does say, he's like, I can't make that up. I'm not lying to you. That's unethical. This is a certified official document. And he's like trying to get Alan to believe that like he's not lying about some shit that he's actually lying about. So and then they tell him that Kathy like believes him too. Like that's pretty messed up. Okay, so start reviewing here. Okay, so then it sounds like now we get to the warden from Westville Correctional. And okay, I'm just gonna read this off here. Let me get to the actual page. Thank you for your patience. Okay. All right, it says oh fuck. All right, here we go. Okay, so the state's 29th witness is John Gallipo, the former warden of the Westville Correctional Facility where Alan was held in protective custody. So this is the other thing that I've heard, and I'm not 100% positive it's true, but pretty sure that they, and that's something else that I wanted to look up too. So maybe I'll do that before tomorrow if I go live again. But John Galapagos, or Glapio, whatever, the former warden, he is no longer warden anymore, and it sounds like he was fired because of like some investigations of like the crappy conditions like of the prison. So I don't know if that's just maybe some move that they made for optics and like had to show that they did something about it, or if he really was like a horrible warden. And like, I mean, they are pretty, I mean, I don't know, there's definitely like worse and better places than others. So, but it says Galapagos testified that Allen was held in a standard 12 by 8 cell, and he was observed cell under suicide watch. He showered 3 times a week and had 3 sets of clothing. So if you think about that, like, I mean, that's literally like all he does is shower 3 times a week. Like all he's doing is he's alone in this tiny ass cell, and then he can come out 3 times to shower a week. This is like a 7-day week, 24/7. Like that's so much time. Like only 3 days he can come out and shower. But it's like kind of like, well, yeah, he doesn't do anything else. Like not like he's like sweating a lot. I think he maybe gets to go out for rec like once a week or something, but and by himself, like he doesn't get to do sports. It's basically just like he gets to go sit out on like a piece of cement. I don't know. It's weird. So it said that he had a tablet to listen to music and order commissary. That's good. And it also discussed his rec time and medical attention. So they don't get into the details about that. But it said Allen got 2 face-to-face visits with his family, which is like nothing. I mean, like in normal prison, like if you're in prison for 13 months, I mean, it's like once a week, I think, or like once a month, or I mean, at least once a month, where they have people. I think it's once a week. I don't know for sure, but I think it depends maybe on the prison and like what's going on too. Like if they're on lockdown, they'll like cancel, certain visitation stuff. But to only have 2 face-to-face visits in like the entire time is like almost unheard of. Like that's crazy. I mean, that's literally like torture. It makes 0 sense what they did to this dude. Like it's weird. It's like seriously weird. And so then said that when Allen got legal mail, he started acting irrational. That sounds like such like an opinion to me. And he would tear up the mail, wash his face in the toilet, and defecate in his cell. So I don't know, like to me that just sounds like someone who is upset about getting legal mail where he's reading all the like crap that he's just been accused of that maybe he didn't do. And if he was already not feeling mentally stable at that time, like it just like would like exacerbate the issue, and I'm sure it did go up and down in waves because that's like how like psychosis and like mental health works. So it says that the warden saw him regularly, and sometimes he would confess to what he did at least twice in person, which to me seems weird. Like honestly, like I don't think I ever met a single warden that I worked with, and maybe during orientation, but like it's weird that he'd be seen. I mean, I wonder how many people were in this correctional facility or like how many offenders were there, because like it just seems like a lot to be seen and talking to him this much. Like why are they having that much like interface together, I guess I'm wondering. And also what I noticed for that too with the Dr. Walla, like I was surprised to see like how much attention she was specifically giving him. Again, like I don't know how many people were in this prison. Like I do know that like 2 of the like medium like max security prisons that I worked at each had like 2,000 people in them, and there was only like a handful. There was probably like 5 mental health like practitioners that worked there, and like only 1 or 2 psychologists. And like one of them was only working with Gen Pop, and they would be the ones that would like go around and like give like the psych evals. And like the way that it works too, at least in Minnesota, was like if you wanted to get on medication. So this is like the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. And in prison, in order to be referred to a psychiatrist, this is at least the way it was at like some of the prisons in Minnesota, is that you would have to have a psych eval done with the psychologist, and then they would have to determine whether or not you were considered to be mentally ill, and then that would be like the gateway to seeing a psychiatrist. but it's like interesting because psychiatrists and psychologists like practice super differently, and like what like their concerns are and what their focuses are totally usually really pretty separate from one another. And like it's just like a weird system, and it doesn't make sense to me the way that it's set up. And also I'm just like wondering why we aren't trying to like help people that are having like issues, like if we're wanting to like make sure that the like society is a little bit safer. Like I just don't really see why we're trying to like withhold you know treatment of some sort, whether it be like medical or behavioral. Okay, so um the dude said that Alan also requested an interview to confess. At this point, the jury was shown a letter from March 5th that read, I'm ready to officially confess to K wording, Abby, and Libby. According to the warden, Alan said he used to work at CBS and disposed of a box cutter used to blank the girls in a dumpster, which isn't even accurate. And then it sounds like Rosie began cross examination. He says, Buck stops with you. And the warden goes, I hope so. And then he says, so the maximum security prison held the worst of the worst people convicted of M word and grape. And Rosie described the area where Alan was held as a prison within a prison known as the Hole. Yeah, so the Hole is like where you go if you're it's segregation. The Hole is the same as segregation. And Rosie said that the prisoners in suicide watch cells were normally there for just a short time, which, like I said, like they usually are checked on like every 15 minutes, but I guess they didn't say like how long they usually stay on it, but they usually do not stay on it very long. Like I would say at the most like, a few days. And that's like when like there's like, suicide watch, and then there's also like a behavioral health unit. So you can go from like the S watch, and you can also still be very like watched very closely on one step lower, like on the behavioral health unit. And then like you could go into general population and be getting treatment still, but like not like special treatment, I guess, or like yeah. But so he said they were normally there for a short time, and the only difference in those cells were the bed and the camera. The bed was bolted down a couple of inches from the floor, probably yeah, for safety purposes. Like I said, they like literally don't let them have anything in there, so like they yeah, they don't have any clothes. They don't have any like I don't think they're allowed to use any type of utensils, and like they're sleeping, like they have to be like unclothed, like they have to be 100% naked. Which is also just crazy and super demeaning too, because I think that they're like supposedly afraid of them using like their clothes. So but no, it's like seriously crazy that they held him here for more than a year. Like that, I mean, if you would ask anybody that's worked in prison before about this, like they would all be like, "What the like is going on?" Like that's literally torture. Like, and this dude hasn't even been like found guilty of anything. So he had no physical or social interactions. Like to me, that like I mean, like, that's why people go conspiracy theory on them, because it's like, why are you treating this person this way? Like, why are you breaking the rules so much? Like, if this person actually did this stuff, like, just follow the rules of the law, like, and take care of it that way. Like, at this point, the shit that they did it might end up getting like someone off that is actually guilty. It's just weird. So yeah, like here it says the general population inmates socialize and eat together and move around the dorm freely, but not Alan. So yeah, like that's the thing. If you think about like the day of a like someone that's in prison, it's like so you wake up, and then you might have like kind of open area. So you're like out of your cell and you're kind of like hanging out like in the tables, like, and it depends too on like the level of security of the prison, but like they can kind of like hang out in like social areas and talk to each other, maybe use the phones, call someone or whatever. And then, they have meals 3 times a day. So like they'll end up like moving units. So like one unit will move down to like, the canteen or whatever. It's not the canteen, actually. They call it like slop, or I don't know. It's like, that's the other thing. It's like all the language that they use in prisons. Like, I think everyone thinks that it makes them sound cool, you know, but it's like also like, okay, can we just call the shit like what it is? Like these people in here are like already being treated like inhumanely enough. Do we really need to like refer to them and their food like, you know, literal like animals, like slop? Like it's just weird. But yeah, so then they can also do like yard together and they'll go play basketball, and then maybe you'll like have some like downtime in the afternoon where it's like social. So then you can like watch TV and like also like after dinner and, you know, just kind of like free time. And then at like a certain time, they have to go back into their cells, like, and then there's lights off like after, you know, another hour or two or something. So it's just, you're definitely like around other people the whole time. You have a cellie, like there's, I mean, unless there's like maybe a handful of like cells in the prison that are only like one bed versus two beds. And like those are usually used for people with disabilities or like with like severe like mental health issues. So it's like pretty rare. And this guy has been alone for 13 months. Like it literally does not make any sense. Like it's weird. And so then it says that Rosie pointed out the many rec areas on a map and asked the warden if Alan used them, and he said no to all of them. So yeah, that's the other thing. They have like gym or like, yeah, there's different rec times. Like I said, you can go outside and play basketball, but there's also like gym time where you can go and like lift weights, or you can like some places have like you can play video games. And then there's also like library time that you can choose to go to the library. I mean, it's like there is a little bit, and a lot of times it's work too. Like a lot of the offenders, if they're like long-term offenders, like will have a job in prison, but like they're getting paid like 10-15 cents an hour, which is just crazy to me. Like it literally is slavery. And like actually in California, just like this week, they actually chose to continue being able to like enslave people. Like it's just crazy. Like people are working like full time, and like, I mean, and also like a lot of the money is getting taken to go get paid towards restitution anyway. So it's like, and they're all private like prisons. So it's like the stuff that they're doing that they're literally getting paid 10 cents an hour to do is like benefiting private business owners. Like, what the hell? Like, none of that makes sense, you know? So, okay. Then they say, the only rec area Alan could use was 10 to 15 foot area with 5 walls and a fence over the top. He called it a cage, which is true. Like I just said, like he wouldn't have had the option to like play basketball or like go out into the yard. Like it would have been just like in this tiny little area, like just where you can at least see the sky, you know, but you wouldn't even go out there. Like they probably maybe give you like 20 minutes a week or something. Like honestly, like it's probably like nothing because this is segregation. So like they usually are not having people on like and in the hole or on, you know, suicide watch like for longer than a few days at a time, you know. Like I mean some of the, I think some of the longest that I saw like people being in the hole for was like, you know, around 20 days or something. So I think legally maybe you can only do like 30 or something, but yeah, so it says that Alan's recreational time was reduced and Alan was closed in a kimono gown under 24/7 observation. So what I just explained, and like the kimono gown is the same thing that I was talking about, like this, the Velcro suit that they would call like the banana suit. And so then the warden agrees, and then he says when an inmate is on suicide, he gets under tighter restrictions, which like we just talked about. And Alan was in handcuffs, leg shackles, and had a transportation lead with hands in boxes. Wow. That's crazy. That is so handcuffed. Like, so there are different ways to transport people, like within the prison, and most of the time you can go freely. And like I kind of explained, is like there's different levels of security. So like if you're in a like much more controlled environment, which is like a higher level of security, like it's just units that move together, and you can only move from like this move it like unit to that like unit, and then you like you have less time to be like out of your cell and whatever. But like most people are not like handcuffed unless they're like in trouble and like needing to get put away in the hole basically. But like so it makes no sense for him to be in this type of constraints. Like he himself, they said, was a danger, and that's why he was in there, not that he's like a danger to other people. And like maybe there was like a couple of days where they were like worried that he might like, whatever himself, like, but I mean, that's separate. Like that should have only been a couple of days and then taken this off. Like he's in handcuffs, leg shackles, and a transportation lane with hands in boxes. Like that's completely unnecessary. And then the warden calls the leads a dog leash. Like, and I'm sure like the warden thought he was like all cool on the stand too, being like, yeah, the dog leash. Like we threw him in the hole, and then we went on lockdown, and then they couldn't get the slop like at the canteen, or I don't know. It's all just stupid. Like, okay, but the warden says that Alan was treated better than the other inmates, which like I disagree with. It sounds like he was like given a lot more like staff one-on-one attention, but that's not being treated well. And then Rosie asked if Alan's defense team was allowed to bring in their phones. Well, the state objected on relevant ground, and it was relevant to showing Alan's conditions. Gull sided with the state and sustained the objection. Okay, I don't really get that, but also Gull, of course, sided with the state because this judge is like super biased. And then it said Alan wouldn't move his hands out of the hole in the cell door. Oh, and then Rosie says, so you zapped him with electricity. And then the warden said doors need to be secured. Wow. Damn. So like he was also being shocked. Holy crap. Yeah, Rosie asked if there was ever a time that Alan posed a threat to anyone. And then the warden answers saying like that he wouldn't move his hands out of the hole in his cell door. It's like, well, that doesn't sound super unsafe. And like in order to like counter that one thing that he did, like you're literally gonna zap him with the electricity. That's crazy. And then they asked about these companions and asked if some of them had been convicted of dishonesty. And the warden said yes. And Rosie asked if the suicide companions violated the rules and talked to Alan. And the warden said yes. He said he did switch them when Alan got legal mail. So got that legal mail. And then Rosie asked if the warden knew what was in the legal mail, and then he said no, which I doubt. And then he said if there was any documentations of Alan's like alleged confession. So the thing that made me like also think about some of my time in prison with these like S companions, like they were like offenders, which is interesting to me. Like, and I think a lot of other people were like, well, that's weird, and it is weird, and like, it's kind of like these people are also getting paid 10 cents an hour to do this. This is like a job because it is a lot of work to be like, if you are wanting to have someone be watched like out of the shoe, but like on, S watch, like, suicide or whatever, like, they think about it, if you had that close of correctional officer, like one-on-one attention, like that's so much more expensive than paying like these guys like 10 cents. So that's why they like allow that to happen. But like they were kind of saying like he like mentioned here his defense lawyer that they've been convicted of dishonesty, and like of course like like it's in prison, like this is like an environment where like it's not a very honest environment, and like it's also not very honest with like correctional officers either, like nothing's super honest in prison. And it's just like we're supposed to like make sure that these people are like protected from each other. Like we shouldn't be putting these people into like I don't know. And apparently they do care about people's safety, because look at the way that they supposedly treated Alan due to like concerns about his safety. So it's just makes no it doesn't make a lot of sense. So, and then there was okay, here we go. Rosie said that Alan's psychiatrist, Dr. Waller, was in a better position than the warden to make conclusions about Richard Allen's mental health. Okay, Waller, is that the same as Walla? And okay, the warden agreed, and then Rosie said after 13 months, Alan was moved to the Wabash Valley Correctional Facility in December 2023, and the warden said he didn't know why he had moved. And then Rosie was like, can it be really hard on someone? And the warden said it's an adjustment. That's kind of bullshit. Like, come on. Like, of course it's hard on someone coming to prison. Like, you can't just admit that. Like, what the hell? Rosie said, especially on mental health, and then the warden said yes. And then Rosie asked if he worked at the prison anymore, and then the warden said no, got let go. And then they objected and violated safety responsibility. Of course, she sustained the objection. So yeah, okay, so it's 4:20 now. So I guess I went over a little bit. I didn't get very far, but whatever. I'm gonna just keep going with this and then come back on tomorrow. But I think right now I'll just check if there's like questions at all, and then yeah. And also, again, if you guys are here, thank you so much, and like really consider subscribing. That would be super awesome. Okay, people are fighting. Malinger, someone mentioned malingering. I say we just Gibbo on solitary for 13 months. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wait, who? Gibbo? Okay. All right. Well, people are fighting, but whatever. I don't know if he was a malingerer, and I will get into that in the future a little bit more. I definitely have tested for malingering, and I can like share some of the different types of testing that is done and like kind of what they entail. I think I even have like copies of them that I can maybe give you a couple like examples of some of the tests, even though that's probably like it's against the rules, but I don't know, like I don't think it should be that bad if I give like one or two examples of questions and kind of talk about my idea of it. And like I said, I'm not no longer like, a like practicing psychologist. So some of the stuff that might make me like become unlicensed, like I don't really care about because I'm not worried about being licensed. Like I'm not interested in practicing anymore. So I think that does give me like a little bit of a cool opportunity to be able to talk about stuff like that. But okay, well, I guess I'm gonna end 10 minutes early just because I'm gonna give that to myself as like a little prize because I'm so proud of myself that I actually went live today and I was like super nervous about it. And but yeah, let me know. I'm gonna also like start thinking about reading comments. So maybe tomorrow I'll spend like the first half an hour like reading comments from different videos and then respond to them, and then spend the other time like reviewing some more of these testimonies. Because I definitely do want to get into the Dr. Walla testimony. And maybe that's even fucking, maybe I'm talking too much right now and I should just like focus on the Walla stuff. I'm going to do that. So, all right, I've talked enough about these correctional officers. I'm not going to revisit them tomorrow. Like basically like none of them have training to be able to like assess things like, mental health or like someone's state. And it sounds like they asked him a bunch of questions, but like, and they were like, yeah, it seemed like he only did it during these periods and that he wasn't very stressed and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, you don't know. You can't, that's just your assumption. You know what I mean? Like you shouldn't even be testifying to that. Like, okay. I don't know. It's just messed up that they could even get away with that. But yeah, and then I will get tomorrow afternoon, I'll say 3:30 again. I'm going to review the Dr. Walla testimony from day 11. So please consider subscribing and liking, and I hope you guys learned something and thought that was interesting, and peace and love, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.